Okay, calling this meeting to order, please stand and able to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is public pursuant to the conditions of the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting March 5, 2024. It's posted on the bulletin board of Borough Hall. In addition, a copy of the notice is and has been available for public and is on file in the office of the Borough Clerk. Please.
Sure. Councilwoman Engelhardt? Here. Councilwoman Fasara? Here. Councilman Levitt?
Here.
Council President Long?
Here.
Councilman Parker?
Here.
Council Vice President Rosetti? We know you're there. And Mayor Carroll.
I am here. The first item on the agenda is work session 2024 budget. Bill is having a personal family emergency. He's offering to come online with him right now, texting him. And I think it's better if he's here in person on Monday night and we just move his portion of this work session to Monday. That also gives all of you a chance to go and see him. I'm going to ask again, if you have issues with the budget, to go and talk to Bill. So you'll have more time. If we just postpone and we just deal with Ed Curran, our tax assessor, because I don't think him talking from the hospital emergency room is really conducive to
Does he want to?
well, you know, he might want to, but the family member may not want him to.
Oh, please.
Not
that important.
So, right, so I think what we're gonna do tonight is have Ed answer all our questions, your questions. And then we're gonna set 5:30 start time on Monday night to do the work session on the budget. Bill has texted me that he is available at that time to come in early. And then we'll move on to this very late agenda, but there's important stuff on here. So why don't you join us, closer, Ed? Thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it, especially when it's huge notice.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Really. So I'm just gonna open it up directly to questions to the council because, but I am gonna ask you to dumb down your answers and dumb as you can be. And I know that's not real dumb, Bill, or Ed, but try and be dumb, okay? So please. So I'm gonna start with the council president. Any questions for our tax assessor?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Ms. Curran, for coming here tonight. So I'm gonna sound kind of dumb in my questions, right? Purposefully. This is how I like to ask so that I understand it and we all kind of get it. I just had a couple questions for you as our assessor. As far as the property values, how much of an increase would you say compared to last year? Are we still property values increasing? Are they flat? Like what are we looking at? What's going on?
May I approach?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. Fine. This spreadsheet is a spreadsheet of comparing the 24 assessments to the 23 assessments, not only by the total, but by property class. But if I speak about class 1, it's vacant land, which you'll see on your first left side of your column of the spreadsheet. Class 2 is residentials. Class 3A are, which we don't have any, just for information, or if we had farmland assessments, it would be the farmhouse, and 3B would be the farmland. Commercials, it says 4A, which is retail, offices, type facilities, restaurants. Class 4B are the industrial. That we have off of Highway 12, that would be the warehouse, could be a warehouse or a manufacturing. And Class 4C are the apartment buildings. The number of line items is how many line items we have of each type in the borough. Vacant land 30, residential 856. We have 223 4A commercials, 2 warehouses and apartments. Now the apartments that are there are their garden apartments, not the individual 2 families. So this analysis, basically, you can see that our land assessment in vacant land, that was just now at 3,338,400. Last year was at 3,278,600. There's a difference of 59,800 with a 1.82 increase. The residential properties are typically single families, 2 families, 3 families are considered, as from an assessor's point, a residential property, and 4 families. Anything above a 4 then goes into the Class 4C. So this year our residentials are assessed at 291,229. Excuse me, 291 million 229,300. Last year there were 268,084,500. They increased by 23,144,800, and it was an 8.63% increase from 23 to 24. Commercially, the 4A, which is 223 properties, is now assessed at 220,220,800. Last year it was 189,624,300. It was a $20,596,500 increase, and it's 10.86%. So the retail and offices went up higher than the residentials. The warehouse is 2024 2,062,000. The 2024, 2023 is 1,956,100 with a $105,900 increase, which is 5.41%. And the apartments, which are now 72,570,200. Last year there were 68,085,900 increases, 4,484,300 with 6.59%. Below that, you can see that if you add all those numbers up, the old average increase of the commercials was 9.7, and the average increase of the residentials were 8.63. Did want to mention that the apartment buildings have been, for new members of the governing body, I've been increasing them at 10% pretty much every year for the past 10 years due to this, the increase in value for the apartments. This year they received an average of 6.53. Some received in this like 7.25, 7.5, and one of them was about 6%. The overall increase in the town, which you can see in the totals, we have 1,121 properties. the overall value of the town is $579,420,700. In 2024 and 2023, it was $531,029,400 with a $48,391,300 increase, which is 9.11% increase overall in our ratables. And if you look down at the bottom, you'll see the comparison of properties for, I did as a residential. The residentials, there's this year 856 properties. The total assessment is 291,229,300 in 2024. The average assessed value is 340,221. If you look at the number below, I'll go right to the answer. There's four less properties, and the average assessment is 314,653. So the values in town, both residentially and commercially, have increased from 23 to 24.
Residential, the class 2. Pretend I'm a first-time home buyer in Flemington. I bought it, let's say I bought it for 300. I'm looking then at the value now. Wow, look at that, it went up. Does that translate into a tax increase? Even like the value went up in my home, and across the boards, that's what happened. But what does that mean for my taxes?
Well, because of all the properties increasing, the result is that everyone's taxes are going to go up. They're all going to increase. So it would depend. It would depend how much would be dependent upon what the county, the schools, and the municipality tax rate is. So how much it's actually going to go up, I couldn't tell you until they struck the rates, regarding that, which is probably going to be, you would know better than I, and by June of this year, because the tax bills go out sometime in the middle of July, and due and payable August 1st with a 10-day grace period.
So another question about commercial properties. So how long have you been the assessor for fun?
1992.
Since 92?
Mhm.
So I don't know if you have a chart handy, but obviously you know this, but what have you seen happen with the property value as far as the numbers? We're not going up, I know that for a fact. We have empty stores, but is it even, I know we're comparing 1992 through the years, but what have you seen happen with where we're getting our tax dollars from? Has there been a pattern with the commercial zones?
I didn't bring that with me, but up till a couple of years ago, the commercial market was not appreciating at nearly the rate, the residentials were. I think that in the past 2 years, we've seen the commercial market increase more and more. Last year was a fairly aggressive increase, and this year, I believe, we did the 9.7 is a pretty aggressive increase. I'm chasing the market in my assessments, and the answer to your question is there are a lot of people that are speculating, that are coming into Flemington to buy, and something that I thought might be worth $700,000 is now selling for $850,000. Something I thought was, $800,000 is now selling for close to $1 million. It's just the prices have increased. So it's not always the rent that's collected or the issue of vacancy. If there's a few stores, I believe that, commercial developers would like to come in and buy, and they believe that Flemington, my opinion, they believe that Flemington is up and coming and they'd like to get it at the ground floor instead of waiting 2 or 3 years from now or 4 years. And the same with, I think the residential also now is picked up because the people coming in, I speak to the younger couple that you were mentioning before, and they're anticipating a change in the commercial market where, you know, that at some point in time, they'll go downtown and walk the streets and have dinner and, you know, have their friends over for the weekend and go downtown and have dinner and, you know, go have you know, an ice cream or take a walk through town, which is what Flemington used to be. And Flemington was that kind of town, and I think everyone is anticipating, not everyone, most everyone's anticipating that to come back.
So another quick question, and then if anyone else has. As far as, so you mentioned like the empty stores, well, we did have some come in.
Yes, we did.
Did you see in your assessment, like, that was pretty obvious, that shift? Like, you're talking about it sounds like you're talking about a trend in that direction. But we had, I don't know how many, I don't know if that's an FCP thing, and how many businesses came in, that these things were empty. And I don't know if you have any.
Well,
anything to
yeah,
say with those.
I mean, you know, I go over there and Manhattan Bagel, that where they're at, was vacant on and off, and they seem to be doing very well, and there's the storefronts are filling up more. I think again, I think, you know, the more development that is indicated on the main street, and I think I'm hoping that it'll become contagious and people will start, you know, redeveloping their remodeling or renovating their buildings and you know, bringing in more tenants. You know, it's buildings that were vacant 10 years ago, you know, had high vacancies are now filled up really quick.
So, yeah, when you talk about like that, Manhattan was empty for a number of months. Yeah, there was obviously somebody had to be paying those taxes, right? But that's better when there's a business in it. Like what?
Well, to answer your question, yes, because I had attorneys filing tax appeals saying they wanted a reduction because they didn't have any tenants in there and they wanted the assessment lowered. So after you have you know, Rite Aid, I had Rite Aid was vacant for years. And now they have a bank coming in supposedly to fill it, and that property is sold at a very high number, around $250 a square foot. And you know, that's something that, you know, I was happy to see that, because that was sitting there vacant, you know, for a long time. And now we have you know, the bank should be hopefully very successful. And then next to it, which you already know, they have the redevelopment of the Spice Factory. So, and that's another thing, you know, that people are looking at is I get a lot of questions from developers and realtors and, you know, what the activity is, you know, what's going on with the Agway property, what's going on with you know, the different property, what's going to happen on Main Street down by the railroad tracks with the development over there. I had approval for some home to it. It was around
86,000. 86.
Thank you. I kept saying this happened to something. 86, you know, townhomes. So and again, that's something when that develops will be a real plus because those people that are going to buy in there want the downtown. They want a downtown that they can walk to and you know, have a cup of coffee or have something to eat or, you know, so that'll change that whole area of town as well. We had a building on Mine Street, the corner of Mine, and it was a vacant building for years. And now it's a salon, and they did a beautiful job renovating that salon. And then there's a nice renovated apartment on the second floor. So a lot of those things are happening in town.
I have one last question. I'm sorry to hog here. So the top 10 tax rate, which we get from you every year. When I looked at 2022, 2023, 2024, consistently the top 4, Flemington Apartments LLC, is that Prospect Hills?
Yes,
Biltmore Realty Company,
another apartment.
Flemington South LLC,
Apartment.
Flemington Fidelco,
Apartment.
and then Huntington Shopping Center. So consistently over these past few years, and I previous to that, I didn't get that, but it's obviously a pattern here. The top earners, taxpayers, I should say, are 4 apartment complexes, and then you get to a commercial area. Has that always been, or is that?
No, because I've been 10 years ago, it wasn't. Now the apartments have moved up to the top. You know, 4 of them have moved up to the top, and I bet on the other 3, there's other three more other garden apartments that will move closer as time goes on. It's just a desire for apartments in the area. And like I said, I've been increasing those assessments for 10% when the town was maybe only increasing it 3 or 4, you know, over the years, and it's they've now risen to the top of the chart that you're talking about.
That was it. Thank you.
Try to get it.
Yeah, these different classes of land, are they taxed differently in any way, or are they all? Like, is the rate the same for all of them?
Uniform tax code stands for.
All the different property classes?
Yeah.
Well, they're all, each property is assessed based on the market conditions, but the tax rates is the same for everyone, except for the businesses. They do have a special district 1 and a special district 2 that they collect. I don't really call it a tax, I call it more of a fee. That money's collected and paid only by the business owners for the group that runs the business activities for the businesses and promoting their businesses. So it's not really a tax, it's money coming in that are paid by the businesses. The tax collector, Rebecca, collects this. I believe she disperses it quarterly, I'm not quite sure, to the business group, and then they use that money to operate in promoting business activity in the town. So that's why their tax rate that they pay is higher than everyone else.
Well, to be clear, state of New Jersey, by our constitution, has a uniform tax code. Everybody has to tax the same. Only the legislature can change that. So the legislature has passed legislation to give 100% disabled vets forgiveness in all their property taxes, and seniors can get a tax freeze, but the tax rate is the same for everybody. So the tax rate is the same for the businesses, but then they have an additional tax. It's not that the tax rate's higher. They have their tax rate and then their tax on top of that. Any other questions?
That's all I got for this moment.
Councilman Parker?
Like 14% of 6.5. Can you just kind of go over, because I think it was, when you took this with me, it was pretty educational for everybody, on how the percentage is how it's taxed. It's like 1.14% or something like that. I can't remember all the details.
I'm sorry.
When we were talking about businesses and how they're taxed rate, we went over how they were assessed.
Talking about the rest SCP?
No, we did something. Do you remember this? We were talking about, we were asking the question of what is the tax percentage on businesses? We kind of went over that with us. Remember, I can pull it up. I think I probably found it.
Well, if it has to do with the tax rate, everyone, they all pay, all commercial businesses pay the same tax rate, except for the special business tax, that rate, it's 15
It depends on the area. If it's down here in Main
15%,
Street,
14%?
it's 15, I think it's 15% here and in Stengel, and then out on the highway, it's less.
I think it's 14
It's 14 cents, so it's 14 cents and
Yes.
15 on the highway, so that 14 and 15 cents, as the mayor said, is added to our present tax rate, and that's how they.
I just wanted to know what that was.
But the commercial properties are assessed the same way as the residential based on market value. It's an interpretation or my interpretation or opinion on market value. So, and it's based on the sales activity. I look at the sales that have taken place,
Businesses and residential?
both residential and commercial. I look at the sales and try to estimate what these businesses or homes, would sell for. I also look at the listings. I talk to realtors. I talk to real estate appraisers. Just try to figure out where these assessments are going. We have a lot of things that, that have changed, like Country Griddle, for example. I'll give you a simple example, had it assessed as a restaurant. So what I did when I assessed Country Griddle, I looked at sales of what I believe to be comparable restaurant sales that sold. And I was assessing it probably at about $1.5 million or somewhere in that area. And it sold for over $3 million. And I kind of fell off my chair. I was like, and what ended up happening was a firm from New York bought it, decided to knock it down. They had a lease already in place for the dental and the urgent care or the aftercare that they have there. They already had an agreement, and they were going to move into this space and take so much space. And then the firm from New York basically knocked the building down and, redeveloped it, and they already had their leases in place. So what's happening is that you see what's there now, that combination of the dental and the healthcare. You'll see it in other towns. You'll see it in Watchung. You'll see it in Monmouth counties. You'll see it all over. There's opening these facilities, and they have an agreement with this tenant ahead of time that they're going to pay X number of dollars for the space that's in there. So basically it was a land sale, but around the corner from that, which makes it difficult, where the Toy Kingdom was, that land sold for $775,000, and it's right around the corner. So I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, it's a stone's throw. I can throw a baseball from one to the other. It's over.
He's got a good arm.
$2.2 million difference. I have to stand in the backyard about it. And it was just,
Which is kind of understandable if they already had 2 leases, they needed that property really bad, and so they were willing to pay the money for it. Yeah, that's just buyer's game. But here's my question, my other follow-up question. So how often are residential taxes assessed? Because I know it, like in most insurance in Bloomington as well, is that there's like a card that's sent that says that we want to walk to your house, or we're walking around your house to see if you've done anything different. Yeah, and so, but if they're not inside the house, then you kind of don't know what's going on. So how often is that done? And if you can't get the full value besides just walking around the house, how do you come up with the assessment? Is that by looking at cells and cells in the neighborhood, or glass cells, or how's that? I know it's a comparable, but I also know there's an assessment.
I think approximately this time almost of the year in March and April, we have to submit a reassessment application to the County Tax Board and the Division of Taxation in Trenton, requesting to do a reassessment. So we do every year. And the requirement is that we have to inspect, only inspect 20% of the homes or properties, I should say property, not homes, each year, so that at the end of 5 years, we've been to every property. When we do the reassessment, we reassess everyone 100%, so everyone's assessment changes. But the inspections that we do in our office, we send out a letter to whatever area that we're gonna inspect that year and indicate that we'll be out to do an inspection of your property within the next few months. And when we go out to inspect, we take with us a card or a sticker that is, if no one's home, what we do is we come to the door, knock on the front door, and if someone does not answer, we put a sticker on the front door to call myself or Nicole, she does inspections with me, and with our cell phone number. And then to call us back so we could schedule an appointment. After that, I walk around the home, provided it's not fenced. If it's fenced in, we don't go in. But if there's no fence, I'll walk around to look to see if the configuration of the home is the same that we have on our sketch, and start to look at the information and look at the home from the exterior. That's about as far as we can go. I can't look in windows.
You have,
And you're-
somebody has got to let you in in order to.
Right, they have to let me in.
But do you also go by anything that they file for, like permit or anything like that? Is that assessed as well?
Yeah, I'll get that, but if someone answers the door and it's a child or a young adult that I believe is under the age of, I usually like to think 20 at least, they'll open the door and I'll talk to them and hand them my card, or Nicole will as well, and tell the person, to have your parents call me. And the funny thing is, when I do that, I look in, I can kind of see what the home looks like. And then I walk away. But we don't go in unless, I prefer it's an adult being there. The question you have is a very, very good question. Building permits. Yes, with building permits, we follow up on building permits. We do have I have a little issue with building permits, and it started with Governor Christie, and it carried over to our present governor. They changed the rules and regulations for building permits. You used to have a building permit, no matter what you done, pretty much on whatever you did to your home, you needed a building permit. You needed a new roof, you had to get a building permit. If you wanted to put in new siding, you would have to get a building permit for bathroom renovations and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now you can renovate your home without taking out a building permit. You can put in new siding, new windows, and new roof. Well, now you just change the whole complexion of your home on the outside. Then you can go inside and put in new kitchen cabinets or new bathroom cabinets, and sinks, floor covering. Can't do electrical, you can't do plumbing because that still requires a permit. But you now just, again, change the complexion of the inside of your home. You can put floor covering down without having put it. So now it goes on. So a lot of the things that are being done by homeowners legally, I can't see. And I'm not able to follow up on those because of the law. So if everybody's listening, I subscribe to multiple listings. I'm a realtor that doesn't practice. So I have all the listings, sales and photographs, and I keep all this in my office. And I sit there and I look at it and say, this home sold 3 years ago. I'll go back to 3 years ago to a listing to see what the home looked like compared to what it looks like today. So I go back and forth reading the listings, I can go back into the nineties to look at listings. At what a home looked like, you know, and someone will say to me, oh, we didn't renovate it, then I'll go back to the last listing and see if they renovated. So I kind of just quietly look at it, and then when I'm looking at the assessments in the homes, I can kind of have an idea what it is. And another thing that kind of, you know, I like doing field work. That's like my favorite thing to do, is to go out and walk around and do inspections and be out outside. I find that property owners in neighborhoods are a good source. If someone's home and we start to talk, and all of a sudden someone will say, I think my assessment's, you know, too high. I said, why do you think it's too high? And they'll say, well, that house over there renovated their kitchens and their bathrooms and they did all this, and I didn't do anything to mine. Well, their assessment's the same as me. Oh, really? Oh. So if you take a notebook with you, you're taking notes down.
Not on the house, just because they're just asking the question.
So that happens. There's just different things. And then I can see when I drive around trucks renovating, you know, I can see what people do, which you see as well. So do I pick up everything? No, I can't admit that, but you know, I can't see what someone does to their basement. It's just impossible. And even a kitchen, I can't see because unless they let me in.
So permits are no longer like something that you can go by anymore.
Well, I can for certain things, because if they do major renovation to their kitchen and they start changing electric and plumbing and they start, when they do, you know, they should be taking a permit out for finished basements. That's something that needs a permit.
Anything in the historic district, they actually still do have to file, even, you know, if they've changed the color, they're changing the windows, you know, you
Like your interior of your house,
Right.
that's the thing.
so you can trigger it from that.
On the
as well.
outside, you can see it, but the inside.
Yeah.
You can get your approval and it sits there for a long time too.
Anything else, Councilman?
No, that's it.
Councilwoman Pissarro?
Okay, so a couple of questions. So you were talking about the senior tax freeze.
No, I was.
Oh,
Madam brought it up.
Okay. Okay, so there's a senior tax freeze and the veterans tax freeze. Now, I
By the
think
legislature.
by the legislature. So the 2024 summary report, okay, which we got last week. So there shows on there that there's seniors, there's 25 senior citizens, right? So are we've frozen their,
That's
no?
not how it works.
Okay, then explain
You
how.
have to be of low income.
Okay,
To be over 65, low income, you have to file with the state of New Jersey for it.
okay,
And then they do it, and then it gets sent here.
okay.
He has nothing to do with it. It's
Okay.
an action.
That's what I'm trying to
take,
get.
And it's the same thing with veterans or disabled. If they don't apply, they don't get it.
So they don't do it like in New York State where it's just, they just do it. They look at your age and.
You,
you get
no,
it.
just because you're a senior doesn't mean you get the tax boost. You have to be
In New Jersey,
in certain income levels.
in New Jersey, you have to be in a certain. Okay, there you go. Okay, so that answers a good question for me. We'll do that. So we also have one abatement. Or one dwelling abatement on New York Avenue.
Correct.
So on the dwelling abatements, if we've got the one, like, is there a way for us to assess how many of that there could be? And I actually was able to pull out the actual application online. Okay.
Okay.
So the actual, I don't think we want to do it because the address is redacted, but we have this one block, and this one lot. That was 2/15/2024. Are there, how many of those a year do we get? Not a lot?
No, no, not at all. That's for 25,000 maximum.
Yeah,
For
okay.
the 5 years. We had more on the commercial properties.
Okay,
We had one on, Chimney Rock,
okay,
and, some of the properties on Main Street, there's a doctor's office that had one. We had probably 6 or 7 or 8 that have expired, and then they become fully assessed. We haven't had any in the past couple of years so this was our,
I think it's mostly because people don't know about the program.
I think, and our code has it. chapter 27 are tax exemptions and abatements as in there.
And most people don't know that, read our code, so I actually wrote an article for our last newsletter, never got out.
About the abatement.
About the abatement.
I remember that
You wrote it, I'm sorry, Ed, you wrote the article.
Actually, it was posted on our website.
Oh, well, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, that's what I was saying.
I think the commercial properties, the new commercial property owners are gonna start to, like I mentioned before, when they start to renovate buildings, and you're gonna see more of that abatement program utilized, for the redevelopment of some of those properties. And I don't know, maybe because I'm just guessing, people are, if you're renovating your home, and this has nothing to do with, it has to do with everybody in the world, almost. You're renovating your home, you really would like to do it quietly and just have it renovated so nobody knows, and, it's not, if you start getting an abatement, then it becomes public. It then comes out that you now have abatements, and I think, the people like privacy, and I think it's another reason why they don't use the program right now. They might use it, which again, my opinion, if it was more than 25,000, if they used it, it was something like 50 or 100,000, say 50,000, which is still a considerable amount. You might see more people use it and be willing to have their home in an abatement program, because, just to renovate a kitchen is gonna cost you, if you're really taking it down over $50,000, by the time if you gutted the kitchen and redid it, and cabinetry and sinks and everything else, it's gonna cost you close to 50 grand. And then you go to the bathrooms, it's, another 15 to 25.
About 25 at least.
Okay,
So I think my other questions were really for Bill, for pre-discussion. It's really one to understand what some of the abatements were. You were able to get through all of the property taxes. I had a lot of questions about that, but I had that tonight to explain that.
But mostly my office deals with exemptions, like veteran exemption, veteran that's disabled, and is approved by the VA. I receive a letter that shows that they're 100% disabled. Then they become 100% tax exempt to their home.
And then the WID, I see there's
And
also
you
a
have-
little one there.
And then you have senior and veterans that came out of service, $250 tax exemption or deduction off their taxes. Those are the kind of things that I deal with. We're seeing more and more of those because one, the restrictions on the 100% disabled veteran, they never took into consideration prior the mental aspects of the disability, only the physical. So as a result of that, a lot of the veterans were coming up 80% disabled, 85% disabled, and you have to be 100. So I couldn't approve it. And now it included the mental aspect of it. Now they're approving more of the vets.
So since 2011, now you can go back to your service and you can get your 100% disability, even postmortem. Have we had anybody come doing that way? Have we seen any of that? My dad is one of those. That's why I know was able to get back 38 years for being 100%.
So in New Jersey, again,
You have to
you
go.
cannot go backwards unless the governing body passes, the local municipal governing body. State can't make anybody go backwards, only the local government can go backwards and agree to pay back all that money. Try to find one that's willing to do that,
Okay.
because it's incumbent on the veteran.
No, but I'm saying that the 100, so going back postmortem, so the widow of the year, if the gentleman or woman dies, I guess. They could go and they could say, okay, well, my husband was 100% disabled. For many years, but for this year, I'm now going to apply to the state of New Jersey. And then it's gonna come down to us, if they've been approved, and then those people. So I'm trying, like, I know that there are people in my neighborhood that I speak to that fall under that.
Only the
Yeah.
state can approve 100% to state status.
No, I'm talking from the VA, and that's where it comes down from PennDOT. The state doesn't, the state really has nothing for disabled. I mean, we may do it here in New Jersey, but that's really managed by PennDOT. That's Veterans Affairs. No, they would never let a state make that decision.
This, I'm talking about for local, for to pay your property taxes, the state has to make a decision.
Okay. So then they would hand that off. They would hand out their letter from the Veterans Affairs
To the state,
and the
and
state.
then the state
would-
declares it, and then they can apply. They apply to the state, and
Okay.
then the state sends it.
Where I'm going with this is I'm trying, looking at the population, and just the people that are older in our borough versus the younger people. And knowing that there are some people in that 70 to 80 sweet spot where we might be encountering this if they know about it, because there's a lot of activity on it. And then what was my last question? It came from something that Tony said. No, actually, so the tax code, when we're saying the municipality, so the municipality has the ability to pass ordinances regarding abatements. We have the ability to pass ordinances as long as it follows state law. And we don't put ourselves in the position of being sued. We have some leeway there. And maybe that's a question for my colleague Bill. But we have an entire code. Nobody reads it, but I did. That talks about taxes and exemptions and
The abatement is allowed by the state of New Jersey under the state's laws. No municipality can create their own tax code. We have a constitutional uniform tax code. So whatever we do, the legislature has to have state enabling laws behind it.
okay.
We can't just do something. We can't create our own
Right.
senior freeze. We can't create a different rate for seniors. We can't create a rate for people who don't have kids in school. We're not allowed to do any of that. Only the legislature can create it. And then certain things, like for instance, the FCP's business tax, we chose to adopt it. But they enabled it in state law, just like they enabled the abatement in state law. We can't just create.
Okay. So I can take a
And then
deep dive in there to see what's in.
there's many different types of abatement programs, there's different types of pilot programs. All of these are, as the mayor said, the state has, the municipality would have to get approved to do that, but those are something that are programs that help. You see, we never had many towns, except for the places like maybe Passaic, New Brunswick, et cetera, that use pilot programs. And now we're seeing more and more pilot programs in the state of New Jersey, and more coming out this way into Hunterdon and Somerset counties, so that's something that a lot of towns are gravitating to for large commercial projects. Someone's coming in and putting in a 250 unit apartment building, they'll give them a pilot program. And what the pilot program does is that it basically,
That I understand.
okay,
Masterclass.
it's a benefit to the town, over a 30-year period, and then it goes to ad valorem tax, regular taxation after 30 years. But that's, all those programs, as the mayor said, have to be set up by and approved by the state before we can even consider them.
And the last question. on this. So when we start looking at licenses for plumbing and electrical, that we start changing things around different parts of the building or home. Are you able to see, because I know that we have them here, Airbnbs or VRBOs, are you able to see anything that would indicate it? We may not, like this building is going through some sort of renovation. We're seeing a lot of electric change. When you're looking at those applications, those licenses to do the work, are there anything that you just have seen that might be triggering that it is that type or that unit is being used for that purpose? For short-term and long-term rentals?
Yeah, it would only be if the, you know, depending, like, for example, if someone was setting up their, which I assumed in some cases that somebody set up their basement as a Airbnb or, but you know, I can't really tell if it's part of the home itself, because if a home is a 3-bedroom colonial and, you know, they're making it a Airbnb and renting out a room on it, they don't have it set up as an Airbnb, like, cause sometimes you go into, we had a place, the property on Main Street that had, rooms that you could rent for, you know, people would come in for the weekend, but when they went in there, it was, you knew that it was an Airbnb because of all the safety issues, all the things that they had in the home, the signs, you know, the way the tables were set up in the kitchens and, or, excuse me, the dining rooms for people to eat. But not all of them are, not everybody, what I'm trying to say is, one of the obvious things beside the electrical is if you're looking how the home is laid out, you know, you look, most people don't have their dining room table sitting there with silverware and
Yeah.
and plates and set up ready to eat, you know, for every, you know, in the middle of the afternoon or in the morning. So it's, you know, you can probably detect just by doing the inspection and trying to see if it was, but I haven't come across any, you know, to answer your question, and maybe because they just won't let me in.
But a lot of Airbnbs, I've stayed at
It's the same
Airbnb,
thing.
but a lot of Airbnbs just don't operate that way, right? I mean, it's just, you get the key to the house or key to the apartment and you're on your own.
That's
They don't try to
VRBO.
do, they
That's
don't try to
like-
do anything. They
That's
just,
more like a VRBO type of situation.
right, but it's advertised as an Airbnb, and the bottom line is that would be very hard to detect because they don't always have things laid out. They may have things locked, but they don't have things laid out. You just
Right.
go in and the house is yours or the apartment's yours or whatever it's yours. So I would just think I don't think it has anything to do with electrical or plumbing or anything like that. Because
Well, that's
like
what I'm
you
saying,
said,
yeah, is there
it's
any
just
way
that
you can see it other than?
I don't know that you can, because going back to Ed's point, it's really, it would be like, I use my house and
Yeah.
advertise it as an Airbnb. I wouldn't be changing anything. I wouldn't be adding more plumbing. I wouldn't be adding more electrical. I wouldn't be doing anything like that because it wouldn't be necessary to do that. You know, I give them a key and they go into the house and they do whatever they want. Hopefully respect it, but the bottom line is, that would be very hard to check because they're not adding on to anything. Most Airbnbs or Airbnbs or whatever, they don't do anything different to your house. They may get different dinnerware or whatever the case may be and lock that up, but other than that, it's business as usual.
Well, I guess my question, okay, the follow-up to that, if you don't mind, does that really affect the assessment of the house, whether it's being rented as a VRBO or a Airbnb, at least in your calculation? So it doesn't really matter.
No, but there is a tax, and I don't have it right at here. There
We're
is,
gonna be introducing them next meeting.
okay.
Well,
so
yeah,
That's where I'm
that's
going.
another local.
That's, yeah, yeah.
That's
so
got
there's-
nothing to do with this.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
what's
It has really nothing to do with the assessment issue, but there are local or.
Unless I want to make sure that's all I'm doing.
Got it, yeah.
That's for certain.
To
So,
answer your question,
Yeah.
another way is that if you were decided to move and keep your home here in Flemington, but rent it out,
Mhm.
it wouldn't change the value
right,
because you're renting it out. And the same thing with the Airbnb is that even if it was there, it really wouldn't change the value because, as you said, the home is still the same and mentioned everything is right in place. So it's not, doesn't really, I don't look at it differently, you know, than as if, as compared to other homes in the area or neighborhood. You know.
okay. If the local municipality did pass some sort of ordinance related to Airbnbs, VRBOs, similar to other municipalities around the state, that still wouldn't affect
It won't.
the assessment at all
Not-
as a
not-
quasi business.
I don't,
Just to collect that.
As a single family,
Well,
Not in this-
single to fourplex, let's say, in the class two,
no, because if it was a two-family, three-family, or four-family, I'd assess it as a two-family, three-family, or four-family. So at this point, no,
And you're out of-
I don't think it would really change it. And how I look at those units, twos, threes, or fours, which is really popular, we didn't talk about that. Multifamilies are they're very desirable in town and they sell for quite a bit. So I would be using those sales to do, to look at the Airbnbs if they were two-family, three families, because, and that's how I value them by looking at the sale prices of those units. Those
Do they have any questions?
yeah, Tony and Trent and Adrian kind of touched on some of mine already, so thank you for those. I think I'll start with kind of along the same lines of just rentals. But I'm thinking more of the larger rental complexes with my question here. You had mentioned during your presentation that, and you had mentioned this it had been mentioned last year as well, as you stated, that you've been increasing the values of the large complex apartments regularly over the last few years. Each year that you've been doing that. Does your assessment relate to at all, or do you take into account at all when you're doing those assessments yearly, rent increases on the tenants? Like, does the rent, if the rent goes up $100 from last year to this year on one of the large complexes per month, this is as a round numbers as an example, does that affect the assessment at all?
Yes, what I do is I send out income and expense statements to apartment owners as well as other commercial properties, and the information that comes back to me, sometimes I get it in gross numbers, what their annual rent is for X number of apartments. Sometimes I get a rent roll, where I'm able to see what each rent is. And, I use that information to analyze what the apartments are renting for, because if you add up all your rents, which is the gross rent, you've already taken into considered the vacancy factor. And sometimes they give me the vacancy factor, could be 5%, 6%, 4%, whatever it may be. And then I apply the expenses to it and then capitalize that value with the tax rate built into the cap rate, because the landlords typically pay the taxes. Landlords pay a lot of the expenses. I don't include the expenses paid by the tenants, just the landlord. And then, so I have the gross income with a vacancy factor, which then comes down to what we call an effective gross. And then I subtract all the expenses and I capitalize it. And capitalize means I have a capitalization rate, which is developed by the current interest rate and the return on the investments. And, cap rates could be 7%, 6.5%. Court systems in New Jersey are accepting, if you can prove it's 6 or 6.5%. Sometimes lenders will lend less than that, but it's hard for me to prove that in the court. But I can prove, 6.5%, 7%, which is the judges seem comfortable with. And then after that, I take the tax rate, our actual tax rate, and I add it to the capitalization rate, because I'm saying the landlord is paying the taxes, and I capitalize my bottom line number, which is called the NOI, net operating income, and then I come up with a value. And I do that for the larger ones, like your garden apartments, large with the smaller units, such as the 2 families, 3 families, and 4 families, I use 2 ways to look at it. One is I look at the sales and I analyze it per unit or per apartment. So if something sells, simple math, if something sells for 100,000 and you have 4 units, they're worth $25,000 per apartment. And then what I do is I look at a gross rent multiplier. And a gross rent multiplier is when you take the total annual rent and you analyze it to the sale price. So some 4 family sells and you know what the sale price is and you know what the rent is, you can find out how many times the annual rent that sells for. Is it 10, 11, 13, whatever it is, it varies. And it will vary because it depends on who pays the utilities, but without getting that much involved is, that gross rent multiplier gives me an array of how many times the annual income these properties are selling for. Because years ago, when people sold multifamilies, they would say, that sells 10 times gross, or that sells, 12 times gross. And you just take the gross income for 1 year, multiply it by 12 or 10, and that's how a rough estimate of what you think that multifamily is worth. That is something that I use to develop, because to find out where those are selling for, and also the, sale per unit. But when you go, what you mentioned, the garden apartments, the bigger ones, I do an income approach based on the rent and the expenses and the cap rates, and that's treated more like a commercial property, like if it was an office building or a retail shopping center. And doing the same thing, taking the total rents and vacancy and minus the expenses and capitalizing the value.
Okay, and so while I appreciate how much detail you clearly go into with your analysis on all of that, I'm gonna back up and dumb it down a little bit just for me.
Simplified, I'm not gonna dumb it down.
That's it. We'll simplify it just for me, because I'm sure I'm the only one that needs it to be simplified. When it comes to the line item that you gave us here on the chart for specifically the larger garden type apartments, let's call them for lack of a better word, that percent change in this year was 6.59%, you mentioned. So the assessment went up 72, up from 68, for a difference of 4,484,300, correct?
Correct.
On that line item. So what you're telling me is that assessment, that difference in value of over almost $4.5 million takes into account whatever the landlords have invested in regarding repairs and as well. So so what you're saying is the 6.59% increase in value it does, or has already taken into account any money they've invested in the property over that year.
Right.
Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, but some of the money that they invested
Yeah.
is amortized over a period of time.
Yes,
I don't
maybe
take it
like
as a lump sum.
depreciation,
So
yeah.
I'll take it, I'll say, well, this is something that I'll look at and say, I'm gonna amortize it over a 5-year or 10-year period. So if something is $100,000, I'm not just gonna take that lump number of 100,000. In some cases, when it's capital improvements, I'll take it as 20,000 over the next 5 years or
Okay.
something of that nature.
Yeah.
So I have to look at it. But yes,
Okay.
you're absolutely right. It takes into consideration all the improvements.
That's
And
fascinating.
it takes into consideration the rent increases. But what it also entails too is interest rates. So if the interest rates go up, and so we talked about my capitalization rate. So if the higher the interest rates, the lower the value. The lower the interest rate, the higher the value. So if the interest rates go up, they have an impact on commercial properties. Because they're paying more in to the bank for interest than they're collecting in their pocket. Their profit is coming down because and so therefore, when they're looking at this investment, their profit margin is less than it would be with a lower interest rate. So what they're doing is the interest rates, every time it goes up a point or two, then it has an impact on because you can only increase rates, rent so much. You can't increase rents $400-500 in a month. You can only raise it $50 or $100 to do it. But if the interest rates go up 1.5 points, well, that's a pretty big jump that has an impact on the value.
That's fascinating. That really is. And just interpolating if it's 6.5 and 6.59% change from last year to this year. And even taking that into account, taking maybe the interpolation over 5 to 10 years into account, or looking at maybe a little more than 1% a year. And plus that, not even accounting for that interest, that interest versus profit margin. That's fascinating. Thank you for that explanation. That gives me a little more insight into the numbers. So thank you for that. Okay, so a couple more of my questions related to let's see. Sorry, I just want to go back and look at my notes here. Are our assessments affected by changes to the ordinances, property ordinances that we have done over, the last year, let's say? For example, one of the things that we highlighted in one of the ordinances, I honestly can't remember if we executed it or not, but something that's been proposed over the years, forgive my memory, is things like single family homes that have, a lot of people are doing she sheds or outbuildings that are their work from home location. And one of the proposals was to accept an outbuilding as part of, as acceptable to either build or renovate to create either an on-site small business or, one of the things I just mentioned. Does that, has any of our ordinances affected your assessments, or do you ever take a look at any ordinance changes that we make to influence your assessments?
I don't actively read all the ordinance, to be honest with you.
Why not, Ed? No.
But the answer to the question is, if it's a zoning change, or, and you allow the property to be expanded, the improvements to be expanded, whether you had a detached small office or you expanded your, what we call floor area ratio, so that you could have more space. Absolutely. The more relaxed you are in your ordinances when it comes to the development of a property, it has a big impact on the value. So basically, how can I explain it?
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's basically if the more flexible the ordinance is, or if it gets more flexible or allows more, that's something that could affect your assessment analysis.
Yes, I mean, what I do see is that sometimes, and I won't mention here, but I see in some towns, they have very restrictive ordinances, and somebody will build a home and on an acre and a half or an acre lot, and after they finish building it, they want to put a swimming pool and a cabana and large patio, and the town will say, well, the ordinance doesn't allow for it, and therefore you can't have a patio, and you can't have this patio unless you come in for a variance. And now it costs the the taxpayer quite a bit of money to come in and ask for a patio, a pool and a cabana, if they can get that, approved. So the more relaxed the ordinance are, in that kind of an example, the more valuable the property becomes, because you can expand those, those uses and have those uses in your backyard. So again, we're back to floor area coverage, that you have, how much floor area can you cover on a lot? How much space can you develop between patios, pools, house, whatever? It becomes more advantageous. Now, those ordinances in the ordinance book, I follow. Those are the ones I follow. Is what the ordinances are that allow you in the building codes, to do in the town. And people will ask me, what can I do with my home here? Can I put a pool in? And I'll say, well, I'm not the zoning officer, but I think you need to speak to your zoning officer. But this, I'll give them copies of it and say, you really need to talk to the zoning officer. I don't know really. And maybe in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, but I'm not going to say no to that person. I think direct over to the government.
Great, that's great. So you are aware that we have adjusted some ordinances, some are still proposed, and you keep track of that stuff as year to year. What?
Those I read through.
Very good. Okay, great. That's also, that's wonderful. I'm gonna change the subject a little bit.
We're going on an hour and 15 minutes with them.
Okay.
This is really supposed to be about assessments and how it affects the budget. We've really gone way afar of that. So if we can kind of keep these questions towards how assessments and the assessed values and everything else are impacting the budget or not impacting the budget, I think,
Okay.
we had 9 people listening originally, we've lost them all. So,
Well, I thought that my questions related to assessments, but I will try to pare it down, focus it a little more. And
nothing directed towards you
oh,
in general.
thank you. I appreciate that side note. Assessment of non-for-profits, publicly owned buildings, things that aren't, taxable. How is that affecting our budget this year? Does that something that you keep, that you even keep track of, or can advise us on, how it maybe is affected last year versus this year? I'm not sure where that question's landing, but you get my drift, I think.
Maybe. The exempt properties that we do have in town, the exempt organizations that operate in town and own their buildings, of course, don't pay taxes. Those I go and I still inspect those to see if they're operating as an exempt organization, still occupy the facility, and that they're not subletting the space out to a profit organization. And the county and owns a lot of buildings, and they're exempt, of course. So and I have to assess those each year to come up with a value to put in the tax list. So when you look at the tax list, you'll see those buildings that are assessed.
Are they listed as a different, I'm sorry to interrupt you, are they listed as a different class on
Yes.
this?
They're not on this sheet, but they are class 15s. And there's 15 A, B, C, D, E.
I would love to see that eventually, just as a side note, that line item on here.
I could print out,
That'd be great.
I can print out all the exempt properties.
I'd love
That would tell you who owns it and what they are, and that's fine. And that's easy to do. It's just that, and what their assessments are, and so that's something I can furnish everyone, a copy of that.
Has any properties either been abandoned or been kind of underutilized or demolished and left for years, or whether or not they're an area in need of redevelopment currently or not, makes no difference. Properties that are under construction for years and years and years, how are those addressed in your yearly review? And has anything in particular affected this year's budget as a result of those?
There, in the past, we had some homes that were in need of repair that were over in the in section of town, like I'm thinking off the top of my head, over in the Stengel area, and different parts of town that have been purchased and renovated, and assessments increased as a result of those, but they were in dire need of repair for many years, and finally when they sold, the new owners came in and renovated those. That is what you're, kind of referring to. Abandoned, well, I would.
I don't know if abandoned is the right word, because the people still own the property, they still pay taxes on them.
Right. No, the Agway property was not really being used as its fullest use, but it did have approvals. It just sold it because of the approvals. It sold for considerably more than it did, a few years ago.
And you take that into account when you're assessing.
Yes, I do. And the approvals, anytime a property receives approvals, I try to follow that, because then I can adjust those assessments upward because of the approval process that they receive for, like Liberty Village. Liberty Village has increased quite a bit this year, because of the approval process increased last year, and now I just spent time working with the owner, and we're setting up the block and lots and going through that. So the next stage after they demolish it, I'm following that with Liberty Village, and they're going to be demolishing the buildings, and I would say sometime in 2025 you're going to start to see dwellings being built. And that was we all know what happened in Liberty Village, so that was one that value was extremely high and then came down, and now it's going to be more than the rateable after it's finished will be 3 times what Liberty was in its height, because of all the homes that are going over there.
Again, that goes in line with another one of my questions as far as trends in housing over the last 2 decades, and where is that going? How that affects our budget this year versus next year.
So how kind of shift that into like right now? Like,
Well, that's what I was trying to,
like,
that's what I was trying to get into.
what we're dealing with.
Right, that's what I was trying to get at was, I don't want you to ask, I don't want you to answer what those trends were in the last 2 decades. What I want to know is how is that affecting our budget last year versus this year?
Well, I'll give you one. Liberty Village's assessment went up 28% this year, so that increase in value has helped the value of the town go up. As you can see, our commercial there went up 10.86, but just that one property investment went up on not every lot. A couple of their lots are isolated, but the larger lots went up 28%. So some of these Agway's property has gone up, I don't know, 20 some odd % or more.
In the
so some
last year,
Yeah, this past
and
year.
that's reflected in our budget.
And this will be reflected in your budget because it's reflected in the rate here.
Right.
So this is another good point, because this is what, if we didn't do a reassessment and we just let the assessment sit, And the only thing that would increase would be some type of a development, new house or whatever, might increase it, or a commercial building, whatever. The taxes would, the change in taxes would be 100% related to the budgets. So they wouldn't be calling me. They would be calling you and the schools and the county and saying, why did the tax rate go up 6 cents, 10 cents, 8 cents, whatever it may be, whatever is needed for the budget. So what happens is that the more the ratables that we have, ratables meaning assessments, an increase in assessments, it helps the budgets. It helps it because you're bringing in a large taxpayer who's going to pay more taxes than the property and develop it like Agway, like Liberty Village, etc. It's going to develop that property and take some of the burden off of the existing property owners in town. Doesn't mean that the overall taxes collected are going to be less. It might be more, but those new property owners will absorb some of the burden, the existing burden that the taxpayers in town have. So to answer your question, yes, it's the more you allow the zoning, the more things you approve, the more development in a positive manner that occurs. It's going to help the existing residents in town, the existing commercial properties in town, and it's going to help, with your budgets, in a positive way. So I will be discussing this.
Hallelujah. So, but I get it.
We still have the council vice president to go.
Oh, yes. Can she,
Well,
I have
what I
one more.
get from you, are you done?
I have one more question for Ed. Related to, is there a line item on our budget, and we might have to ask Phil this next week, is there a line item on our budget for, properties that have been not paying taxes, but are eligible to pay taxes? Either non-for-profits, like you said, that aren't working, that aren't working anymore, or I don't know, there's a few in town and I don't want to necessarily highlight them, but how much of your time per year is spent going after properties that are under taxed, and is that reflected in the budget that we're reviewing in these next few weeks?
Yeah.
Maybe
There
we need a
there
minute
is
to
no
explain that.
line in our budget that shows tax exempt properties. There is a line in our budget for uncollected taxes.
That's what I'm looking for.
It's in the budget.
Okay, that is in the
And
budget.
that's maintained by Rebecca. Rebecca is the collector.
Yeah,
It's-
but
it's-
are you going after ones that, are you going after ones that aren't I know you're not the tax collector, but there are properties in town that need to be reassessed.
Are their assessments too low?
Because, no, because their use isn't what it used to be.
But that's one of the things that FCP is working with as well. Is they're working, and that was a
And
conversation.
I
we
believe
had
that's
with them.
more, that's
Hold on,
his
listen to
job,
what I'm
right?
trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I have some information for you. This is what I'm trying to tell you. FCP along with, we had a discussion with Ed and FCP exactly about that. And they're working at that. They're doing some things as well that will include Rebecca. So there's something that's happening that is going on. It hasn't materialized yet, but we've had the discussion that that's something that everybody's going to be looking.
Great, that's probably all I need to know then. I'm done.
Council Vice President, you have any questions for the tax assessor?
Wait, I'm gonna allow her to talk. Liz, can you talk?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I'm gonna just, I've been listening to everything. Thank you so much for asking great questions. But I don't have anything right now.
Great, thank you. All right.
Thank
one
you.
last- Anybody have anything directly said regarding how assessed values translate to the budget? And thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice seeing everybody.
Thank you.
And wait, I'm gonna unmute her again.
Okay. We're gonna go on to the regular agenda at this point.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah,
I'm here.
I'll mute at you because we have to do roll call soon.
Okay.
I mean, you know, for
Oh,
the
vote, yes.
resolution.
Okay, regular agenda resolution 2024-47, authorizing the hiring of Keith Grabowski as the temporary electrical subcode official. So everybody knows, our electrical subcode official had a tragedy in his family, he's taking a temporary leave of absence. And so we have to keep moving with inspections because we have a lot going on in town. So John Tillotson, our construction official, found this gentleman willing to step in on a temporary basis. And so this is putting him into our payroll system. Can I have a motion, please?
On the move.
For a second.
Lozaro, second.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Engelhardt,
Yes.
Councilwoman Fasara,
Yes.
Councilman Levitt,
Yes.
Council President Long,
Yes.
Councilman Parker,
Yes.
and Council Vice President Rossetti.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 2024-48, referring ordinances 2024-01 to the Flemington Borough Planning Board for findings and reviews in accordance with the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 48:12A-7. So this is attached, it's regarding redevelopment of the village. And, can I get a motion?
On the move.
Sarah, second. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Engelhardt,
Yes.
Councilwoman Fasara,
Yes.
Councilman Levitt,
Yes.
Council President Long,
Yes.
Councilman Parker,
Yes.
and Council Vice President Rossetti.
Yes.
And then finally, an ordinance, for the borough, this is an introduction of ordinance, do you have a number on this?
2024-01.
2024-01. So 2020, this is actually backwards, we should have introduced this first before doing the last one.
I'm sorry.
2024-01 was sent to all of you at least 6 weeks ago, which is the plan amendment, as written by our planner, Beth Manis, and approved by the developer. So the introduction will happen tonight, then it's referred to the planning board. Planning board has 45 days to take this on. This is or will be writing the consistency review for the planning board. And this coming Monday night, pilots for the site. I can't remember if it's 4 of them or 3 of them. There's one for the commercial building, one for the veterans homes, and at least one for the townhouses. I'm not sure if the low mod income have their own ordinance. The pilots have been agreed to by the developer as of this weekend. You all heard about all this under executive sessions. Really been no changes to anything. They will be posted publicly as soon as I get clean copies of them from here on, which should be tomorrow. They'll be posted publicly for the public to look at them. And you'll be introducing them on Monday. And then all that will be left is the resolution, which is the redevelopment plan itself. And that still has snag, which will be discussed in executive session next week under contract negotiations. Introducing an 2024-01, an ordinance of the Borough of Flemington adopting the Liberty Village Phase 1 redevelopment plan dated January 23, 2024, and rescinding the Liberty Village Redevelopment Plan, Flemington Borough dated November 18, 2021, is amended in accordance with the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 48:12A-7. I have a motion to introduce.
Long move.
Is there a second?
Parker second.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Engelhardt?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Pissarro?
Yes.
Councilman Levitt?
Yes.
Council President Long?
Yes.
Councilman Parker?
Yes.
And Council Vice President Grisette.
Yes.
And that public hearing is, slated to be,
March 25th.
March 25th, if and only if the agreement is completed. Actually, that's not true. We can do the public hearing and not call vote. So yes, we'll do the public hearing on March 25th. Yes. Because we're gonna, the contract should be voted on when the pilot and the plan are voted on. So we can do the public hearing, and if the contract's ready, great. If it's not, we'll hold votes. Okay, we're up to public comment session. Anybody from the public has any questions or comments? I shouldn't say questions, just comments. Come up to the mic, name, address, the record. Seeing none. Again, before we leave, I'm just gonna urge all of you to talk to Bill if you have questions about the budget. We have a lot of things that we have to do by law for the DPW, water and sewer, with all of these new rules that have come down that are going to cost the borough literally millions of dollars. So if you have questions about capital and paying down debt, if you have questions about capital and not putting enough money in, if you have questions at all about this, I'm urging you to not wait for Bill to be here, but to have private conversations with him. Because last year, Bill really wanted to see a budget that was at least 3.5% to 4.5% to get this debt under control. It didn't happen. And as he said to me in writing not long ago, was trying to make up for the shortfall from last year. So that's it. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Long move.
Is there a second?
Parker second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Good night. Good night.